I'd like to begin by introducing Angelica Fuentes from Mexico City, also London. She has raced and navigated in La Carrera 22 times and has won the top category. She's highly fought over also. Thank you, Angelica. And next we have Bill Beilharz. Bill Beilharz has won the premier category of La Carrera Panamericana. Also, he built his own car and ran it 6 times, and again, winning it overall 1 time. Crash or win. Awesome to have you, Bill. Thank you. Next, I have Ivan Zaremba, a great person here at Pebble Beach, a car restorer. I'm so thrilled. Ivan has been a mentor to me my entire life. And he has run the La Carrera in a Hudson in the original category with drum brakes and skinny tires. He's, of course, a judge at Pebble and honoring the tradition of how cars were built. His car was also featured in the movie Cars by Pixar as the impetus for Doc Hudson, so that's something. And we have really, arguably, the most important person in this entire event, Eduardo Leon, who has come from Mexico City. Started this race in 1988 and has always been the president in my mind. And how he does it, we're here to find out. It's just an amazing accomplishment. And finally, Doug Mockett. Doug Mockett has raced in La Carrera 22 times, has won the event overall. And he's a fan. When you watch anything on YouTube, when the kids hear his car coming, they'll say, Mockett, Mockett. And he's just on the pipe, 600 horsepower, driving up the mountains in Mexico. And it's just really great to have you here. Go ahead and have a seat, if you would. I would like to start, I think what's really unique about today, and we harness this in, we could have forums forever about this event, but I want to give us a picture of what it's like to really race in La Carrera. And from my perspective, I've won my category a few times and raced 6 times there. But the top class, the one that Angelica and Bill and Doug race in, is truly amazing how fast they go in these big cars. And I want to take it through a day, and we have the opportunity to do that, what a winning car does. Because if I'm trying to win, I'm really curious about how they do it. And so I'm going to start with an entire day. Like, what's it like? What time do you wake up? What do you need to do? And I'm going to let Angelica Fuentes start with that. And related to that, there's this book. And this is a very competitive rally. We're racing as fast as we can in the mountains. And it has every turn you take on the road is in this book. And with that, it's a lot of information. And there's no doubt that the navigator is the most important person in the car. It's so easy to drive in the event, really. The hardest thing to do is navigate. Thank you, Angelica. Wake us up in your hotel and what you might do on a typical race day in La Carrera.
Thank you, Conrad. Hello, everybody. Well, actually, before we start La Carrera, in my case, can you hear me? Is it there? Yeah? Oh, sorry, I'm not very used to this. I'm used to my helmet, but let's see how it goes. Well, for me, the start of La Carrera doesn't start when the official start. For me, it starts 15 days before. I fly to Mexico. I pre-run the whole race. Before I start, it's about 2,800 miles that I have driven with my driver, taking pace notes for every stage, and we might recce 3 times every stage is what I did last year that I end up racing with Gabriel, and we pre-run 3 times every speed section before we go to the start of La Carrera. So for me, doing La Carrera, it's about a month, 15 days preparation. By the time you get there, recce, start qualifying, and then we get to the start, 5 o'clock in the morning. You're so excited, ready to go. And normally, the start is not exactly in front of your hotel. So you get ready, sort of breakfast, get to the start, find your driver. Maybe he might be running a little bit late, and find your driver, get and pick up the car, drive to the start, fight for your place of the start, get your chip, your card, all set, and yeah, ready to go. Find your minute to start, and then goes down to 5, 4, 3, 2, and go. And that's the arch. And normally we have maybe 20 kilometers to get to the first stage of the day. It's really cold. It's normally 7 o'clock is the start of the first day of La Carrera, and it's the first 2 or 3 days are the longest days of La Carrera, and then we get to the start, and the adventure really starts there because, you know, you're really looking forward to all that preparation and all that wait for a year, and it's another Carrera, and then it comes down to the driver.
That's right. And from there, now Doug has been just doing exactly what Angelica tells her. And Doug, would you start with, what's it like? Doug drives Formula One cars in vintage racing and other cars. What's the difference between racing in La Carrera on the roads, and the mountain roads, to racing on the street?
Well, it's actually exactly the same, only when you're driving in the Carrera, you can really only drive at 95%, because you've got to leave a little reserve in case the corner is not exactly as it's supposed to be, or you come over a hill and the turn is right here rather than down there, or you come over a hill and there's a burrow in the middle of the road, or a whole bunch of things can happen. But that's the easiest thing to say. But the truth is, you tell yourself 95%, but after about 20 minutes, you're right up to 100%.
Bill, tell us, do you drive that way? Or I think you might go a little more, start at 100. Is that possible?
Well, if you're gonna, I mean, if your intent is to win, every second counts. And so you can say, well, I need to take it easy for the first day or the first session or whatever. But actually, and I know Eduardo doesn't want to hear this, but basically you need to be, 100%, well, with a little reserve from the race start, because the seconds you give up the first day, you have to fight back later in the race.
Yeah,
So,
it's amazing, sorry to interrupt, but it's amazing how close this race becomes. You race close to 2,000 miles of, that's not all the racing, but we're often down to 15 seconds or 3 seconds between the top cars after all the days. It's always amazingly close, so you're absolutely right. I like to start fairly quickly, but without crashing, of course.
you have to, well, you just, you need, whatever preparation you're going to do needs to be done before the rally starts. You can say, well, I got tomorrow and I can do this, but the preparation that you do in your shop is so much more skilled than what is done in the pits on the fly afterward, as a necessity. So the more you can do up front, it's a very stressful race to try and win your class or be competitive. Anything you can do to prepare yourself ahead of time, you yourself, your car, your navigator, the choices you make in navigator, your pit crew, do it ahead of time, because after the race starts, it's too late, or the rally starts, it's too late. So not too late to make corrections, but they'll be suboptimal, and you'll be so much more stressed. So.
Ivan, what's your take on?
I think maybe a little background for people who haven't done the event, to understand what kind of event this is. And I believe what Eduardo created in 1988, because that's when this whole iteration of the event started, was the last open road race, where he managed, who knows how, to get the authorities to allow them to close the road in speed sections so that they could make the guy who completed all the speed sections in the shortest number of seconds is the winner. So this is not a time and distance rally like the Mille Miglia in Italy, where it's all about hitting the marker at the precise thousandth. You win by being the fastest. And so you've got this series every day, maybe, 5, 6 or more speed sections, which are timed. You have to make all the reliability things. To be competitive in the event, you can't have any penalty points because you missed the easy stuff. And then it comes down to who is the fastest through the speed sections in total over the entire event of the day. And it's a logistical challenge beyond belief. I was lured down to Mexico by Arturo Keller, who's a big car collector with a giant collection here. And we had talked about the Carrera being reborn in 1988. And Arturo hosted a group of us, and we went out and looked at the cars coming into Puebla and then into Mexico. And I really got the bug, and I wanted to do this myself. Unfortunately, the Carrera was for racing cars, which were really for the Carrera event, designed and built to do that sort of thing. And it wasn't for a few years until Eduardo wanted to expand the base of people who were doing the event, that he created a class for authentic Pan Am cars. And I built an FIA legal Group 2 sedan Hudson Hornet, which means drum brakes, but no alternator, got to have a generator, got to be like they were in the day. And I built that car because I could run it everywhere, in Europe, at the vintage car races here at Laguna Seca, or in Mexico. I did the event only twice, in 95 and 96, but it was the most memorable and the most difficult thing I ever did. And I'm so thankful that I had that opportunity, and to get up here and be an old guy sharing my memories of it. Conrad had this route book in his hand. Well, I don't know, maybe his route book is different. Mine is this thick.
Yeah.
This is 1996.
That's the problem.
And the thing to talk about here is what is in this route book. Because I have to salute Angelica, because the navigator is the most important part of the team. To keep focused, to keep the driver aware of what is coming up. What you get in here is, at a certain mileage, there's going to be a left turn or a right turn of difficulty, and they give you a number which tells you kind of the speed of the corner, and you figure out in your particular car what a difficulty 3, what that means. To be competitive, either you've driven it before like Angelica has, or if you're like me and you've never seen this place before, you have to rely on that navigator, and you have to believe. Well, this makes it the most teamwork like motorsport event that I know of, and an event like no other that is going on today. And I had to laugh pulling out these books from 1996, looking at the lists that were made for what to do before the next morning and all of that. This one has a list at the bottom of it says, drink cervezas. So
That's an important feature.
anyway, it's a unique event. It's a unique opportunity. And I can understand why there are people, this is the only racing event they do, and they do it year in and year out. Doug, he's a glutton for punishment. He does everything over and over and over again.
That's a definition of insanity.
Yeah.
And expecting a different outcome.
So Eduardo has the challenge of doing so much to run the race in Mexico, and coordinating the times is quite tedious. And just getting back to the day is that we get to a town square, and almost every town we go to, the Zocalo, it's fabulous. The people that have watched the races on the roads and the countrysides of the state that we're in, that particular stage, because it goes from the very bottom of Mexico all the way to Texas, basically, or at least that's what we'd like to do. And it's just wonderful. But then after that Zocalo, where you cannot work on the car, so it's sort of in tradition of how Carrera was back in the day, there was a parc fermé. You couldn't work on the cars overnight. Some categories might have made exceptions for the tops, but in general, that was the parc fermé. So we still sort of honor that, and it's a great time to share with the community. So this is racing coming to the people, and I just want to, again, salute Eduardo, and like Eduardo, to maybe talk about how he does it, the logistics with the townspeople, the mayors, the governors, the timing keepers. Lava.
Well, first of all, thank you to all of you, because this is great to see a lot of drivers, people that have been with us in a race and thinking about coming back. Not as Mr. Bucket is always with us. We cannot get rid of him. All right, anyhow. And same goes for Angelica. She keeps on coming. All right. Anyhow, well, the thing is really easy. When we started this, we had to work in a different framework because the organizer of the race back in the 50s, when I was only 2 years old, the last one, he had a better job than mine. He was the president of Mexico. So he didn't ask for entries, he didn't ask for sponsors, he just closed the whole road, and that's it. And I mean the whole road. There's a story concerning Oaxaca back in '53 that all those guys from the army went to the houses and knocking the door up of every house and telling housewives that keep the pets aware that because there will be pet hunting from 6 to 7 o'clock in the morning. So they wouldn't interrupt the race of Mr. Miguel because the president's name was Miguel Alemán. It was kind of different influence from us. By the way, when they started the race from Tuxtla to Oaxaca, there were only four different roads that got to the first road, to the main road. When we started in '88, the amount of roads were 157. So there was no possible way that we would do it the same very way that Mr. Miguel did it. So we had to stick for the different stages, times the stages, and then transit stages. And that's the way it's been from the last 29 years, with different towns, different cities. And we changed it because, I mean, the mayors or the governors of different states asked us to go a different way because they wanted to have the race. You know, nowadays, it's perhaps not say that we say it, but it's the most important road race in the world because in the civilized world, there's no way you can keep the road closed for a mile. Try doing that in California or in France, for instance. It's different in our country. They need it, we need it. And a lot of people say, is it safe to go racing in Mexico? Ask that market. Is it good to drink water in Mexico? Ask Matt Hammerlin. Or if it's safer with the guerrillas and terrorism, we don't have that so far.
Yeah.
It's a lot better than Barcelona nowadays, perhaps Virginia. We're still in peace. And we try to keep things that way. Let me tell you something. The race is a sport event. We're not involved in politics at all, even though I have to deal with politicians every single year, from different town to different town. Just in Oaxaca, there are 510 counties, different counties. There are counties of 600 people. They don't even speak our language. Try to explain them that Mr. Market's got an automobile with 600 horsepower. Or 500 horsepower to the baker from Mr. Beilhardt. It's not easy.
Just 500?
But finally, they love it. And we're very grateful with all the people that believe in us. We're racers ourselves. Otherwise, we wouldn't be doing this. You have to be a racer to do this. Every single time the race starts with 80, 90 cars going flat out for 7 days, let me tell you, it's some kind of different excitement. I've been racing all my life, bikes and cars. I don't even get mosquitoes on my belly. When the races start, I get bumps.
Yeah.
But anyhow, I got a lot of people working with us, enthusiastic people. They all know them. After a couple of days, even for the newcomers, this is a family. Everybody loves to be within that family. I mean, from the very beginning, Doug loved it. He keeps on coming. All the guys they start hating me because this becomes addictive. There's no other place in the world. And it's so close to the US. It's so close to Canada. It's so close to South America. And we have done a lot of things from the race, even giving jobs to our people. I would like you to know and meet Mats Hammerlund. Mats, will you stand up for a second? This guy here came all the way from Sweden. He's as crazy as we are. Well, the Swedish part, but they're crazy. And he came, drove the race, got in love with the race, and then started doing a shop in San Miguel Allende, a beautiful town. And some other guys from Finland and some other guys from the US started going there to get their cars done. Now he's one of the best tuners for the race and car builders. Perhaps better than a lot of the best ones in America, because we're specialized on it. Mr. Oliveto, are you here? Perhaps, stand up for a second. This is his fourth time, Mr. Oliveto. And he's also a guy which hot rodding is in his blood. You see a lot of fancy McLarens and Lamborghinis and Ferraris out there. But his car is a lot more beautiful than those fancy cars. And perhaps goes faster.
Thank you, Lalo. That's wonderful.
See, we're all hot rodders ourselves. And the way we do things in our country is different because officials, I don't tell them, they don't know what they're doing when they give us permit for closing the roads. They keep on doing it every year. And it's amazing. They just say, we need tourism, we need good press work for our race and for our country. So keep on doing. 7 years ago, I was about to call it off. I mean, I was quitting doing the race because a lot of job. But besides being a lot of work, somebody called me from very close to the woods of Chapultepec, where the president homes. And he said, you gotta keep on doing it because my brothers are gonna be participating in your race. And when that kind of phone call gets to your office, in Mexico, you better say, okay, let's keep on doing it. It was very good that the brothers of the president were going very slow, right, Angelica? So I didn't care about them. I mean, they took care of themselves. But people are going faster every day, that's right?
They're doing their best to.
And better, and they're better drivers. They get prepared. The route book that everybody knows, for the real experimented guys, for the real professional guys, they just keep it a souvenir. They do the road work a couple of times, and they do their own notes. Same as Angelica and now Doug, and the guys who try to win the race. And for us, it's great to know that all this community of hot rodders, of people that come to Laguna or go to Brands Hatch or going to Italy, and we've been there, and they all know the race very well, because this is the very last road race, real road race. It's like bullfighting. You see the bull very close. If you are brave enough, you're going to do it. I mean, I believe they're a group of posers that go and they want to take part in the race and tell the world, because we also sell bragging rights. This is bragging rights going into the race. And compared to any other event in the world, such as the Mille Miglia, Targa Florio, Nassau, or whatever, those are pregnant ladies' parades. This is a race. And if you would try to win and want to win, you better know how to drive and go fast and have a good co-driver. It's basic to have a very good co-driver with you, among you, letting you know what you're going to do. And let me tell you, all of you are invited to a race for a day, for a couple of days. You wouldn't repent. This is different. This is great. This is a different kind of excitement, and knowing a beautiful place as our country. We're proud of being Mexican. We're proud to have a race in Mexico. And we're really proud to have an audience like this one today. Thank you very much.
Oh, thank you, Lalo. Wonderful.
You know,
If I could add
I
just
think-
a point to that. I've been racing in Mexico for a long, long time, and we read in the press about violence and shootings and all of this. I have never, ever, ever seen anything, been part of anything. I mean, it's just, honestly, it's druggie against druggie, and it has nothing to do with tourists. And what you read in the news here is not the reality there. And I mean, I hate to, well, you know, I mean, it's like Walter Cronkite used to say, we don't report on all the kitty cats that didn't get lost today. So it's the same thing. I mean, drug murders are news, and people having a good time going out for a coffee is not news. But it's a safe place to drive and enjoy.
Well, when I first went down there, I was a little worried about, you know, the situation, because you just are getting the newspapers and you think, oh, it's horrible. And I thought, oh, I wonder what's going to be more dangerous. Is it my driving, or is it, you know, kidnapping? Pretty sure it was driving right away. It was like, that was our problem. And it's such a great community. Lalo, I was going to ask questions about risk and how we justify it. But what Lalo does is have several federales, about 6 or 7, that stay with the group the whole way. They're our guys. In addition, when you go through the towns, the police are blocking traffic, which the Mille Miglia does also very well like that. Bring your speed down, of course. The worst thing that could happen is we kill an innocent spectator. And I'd like to just kind of go back maybe to the first day, what it's like in an entire day, because the days are quite long. So Lalo manages to get the data together, and then we have this awards dinner, and that takes a while to tabulate the data, because from 5 o'clock till maybe 9 or 9:30, they're waiting for that. So we go get a little nap. I like the chicken tortilla soup in the town square, maybe take a rest. And then there's this awards dinner every night that qualifies where every finishing position happened. And by the time you go to bed, it's like, 12:30 or sometimes 1, and you get up at 5. And it's like, at first, I'm just so tired on the day 1. But then you quickly get to a point where that's just like my phone, whoever's. You get to, the end of the day, you get used to it. You acclimate. And it's kind of like when you're very competitive, it's like being in war. You're pushing so hard, you're trying so hard. And then the thing that's really huge to me here, and I'd like to just talk about camaraderie. Are you racing, Bill, with people or against people? Ivan, I want you guys to answer that.
Well, I guess you're racing against people. I've had happily, when things have gone well, I've been in the lead. And so in a race like this, you're released first down the road. Your worry is the unexpected on the road, because you're the first guy down there. When the federal police do a good job, amazing job of closing down the roads, but until that first car goes roaring down there, people don't think the thing started. So you have to watch out for that. When due to misfortune or whatever, where I've been placed back in the grid. I've had to pass other cars in the speed sections, and then you're racing against other cars. And you try and do it, you try and do it as politely as possible and as safely as possible, but you don't want to lose time at the same time. So it's, I guess in the transit stages, at the service stops, your team and you need to take advantages. If you can help another competitor, that will pay off in benefit later in the race through goodwill, because we are all there racing together, and we try and help each other. When we're in a speed section, no, you're out there and get out of my way. So that's just the way it is. So it's the way it is in, I think, all forms of racing. When you're on the track and you're under the clock, it's every man for himself. When outside of the track, we're all racers. We're all in, maybe we're all in a foreign country, and if we're the clean sweatshirts that my team can pass out to other team members at a service stop, could be 3 days down the road, they're out of gas and they need help, and some team stops, and so it's that karma thing is big down there. So
Yeah, thank you, Bill. How do you justify, the risk that you take on Helica, just to get back to you here, to spectators, to yourself? What drives you to take a risk?
I think it's justified. I think it's very important for people, for example, the way I see it, people think, oh, I can't afford that very expensive helmet or a hands device. And I say, well, if we're going to play this game, we're going to play it right with the safety, the top equipment, just in case things go wrong. If I have an accident, I know that I have a really good racing suit, a very good helmet, so I will minimize those risks in my equipment, in my preparation, make sure that, every time I start a special stage, I have my seatbelt properly, because, unfortunately, many accidents, and, when people have died, it's because the driver or co-driver had the seatbelt loose. So that's something that first thing I can do, really tight. But I need to take care of myself. I'm thinking, I'm going to play, this is a big boys game, what they call. I'm going to play it right, So for me, that's the way I minimize those risks.
So you feel safe in the car?
Oh, completely. And
yeah.
obviously, well, after 22 carreras and 33 years motor racing, this is my passion. And I will carry on doing it until maybe they don't allow my walking stick into the car. But
Yeah.
So yeah, that's the way I minimize my risk, and the way I see it is like, let's do it, but let's do it right.
Now, Bill, you had a kind of a big accident, I would say. When I was there, you were there, and it was.
that was
Talk us through
the last big accident.
And we want to see you back. Yeah. And I know if you're not back, you have a son in the audience here who's ready to. Yeah. Sorry.
So, well, what's your question?
How do you feel about the risk you were taking up before the accident, maybe after the accident, if it's changed, or you just?
Yeah, I guess I started this way back in 1994, and the term was used, punching a hole in the scenery. Okay. It's like when you're racing down a road at speed and all this vegetation fly by, it's almost you can't really worry about it being real and what might happen. You can't speculate on what might happen because you got to deal with the road. It's only when you go off the road and you punch a hole in the scenery that you realize where you are, or that the downside of it. But you can't. I don't know that there is a way of.
So you block it out of your mind, because I'm scared the whole time. Actually, I'm always thinking about dying. And I'm like, whoa!
You can't be worrying about the what if. Yeah. Like what is going to happen if I crash, and it happens here, Laguna Seca, any of these racetracks. It's a quicker crash, and maybe hit a safer guardrail. But you can't be worried about what's going to happen to me or what's going to happen to my car. and be competitively driving. If you're worried about that, I mean, just don't race to win. I mean, there are I mean, even in the La Carrera now, isn't there a tour category that allows people to comfortably experience the La Carrera, and they're safe. They don't have to drive fast. I mean, you never have to drive fast, but what happens is you just can't. I can't stop. So
Yeah. Well, I think we have a sort of unique panel today, is that this is people that all really do want to win. And there's, when you get down there, you can certainly run this race and not be in this, mindset. You can be completely safe. It's always up to the driver, I think, to put the car in the right place. Yeah. Ivan, you've had some great adventures in Mexico with your Hudson, and the public needed to help you a couple times. What?
Well, there's, referring back to the things that you talked about here, the event is really unique. And even though I'm a veteran of driving on the racetrack for 50 years, going to Mexico, I was very fortunate because my fellow competitors taught me how the event works. I mean, you've got all these, the route book and all that, but it's not exactly clear what you need to do and what you need to be careful of and how to be competitive in the event and to be an effective competitor. I went there with, I guess, what you'd call a shoestring budget, a navigator and no crew. And maybe my example is proof that you can do it that way and be competitive. We did very well in the end. The second year I was there. The first year I crashed, and the first year I broke an engine early on, and that was the end of the event for me. But I rode along with the event to the end, and I learned what I needed to know to go back the next year and do well. And I also, you could make an argument that that would be the best preparation you could make for your own participation in the Carrera, would be to go along not as a driver or a navigator, but as part of a crew with another car. You need to have that information. I don't think you could competitively do well without having had some experience of what goes on. And I found the camaraderie of the other teams exemplary, as they are in motorsports pretty much everywhere. It's a very rare situation in the motorsports world where people won't help you. I mean, we've all, I think, as participants, shared in getting your competitor's car to the grid, to the start, so that you could kick their butt when you got out there. It isn't the same to say, oh yeah, they couldn't make the race because they had a problem, when you could have got them there. And so, we want to go out for the sport of it all. Or, winning is nothing unless there's somebody to beat, after all.
I think, Ivan, that speaks to something I found really, there's so many ways we can compete and race. And when you help other people, and in La Carrera, we had a situation where our car needed a lot of work. And Angelica was very nice and helped in certain ways, also keeping us calm. But just every team pitched in. My wife was helping prepare the motor and fixing the radiator and everything was broken on the car. But by the morning we made it, and we made a lot more friends. So I thought that it is really hospitable. I work both ends of it as a driver and also in the pits. So I support my own car, and I've just made so many friends with the other teams. And by being a sportsman, you always get by giving. And it's also, I think, you're respected more by helping your teammates that you're competing against, rather, not your competitors. It's just a much more rewarding experience. And La Carrera, as Lala was saying, has this very family involvement. And at first I was afraid. I was like, oh, this is scary. But then we just started opening doors, and it's become a really great experience for me to do.
Conrad, I think something needs mentioning here is talking about, you're out there going on hundreds of miles of public roads. You run into populations everywhere you go, that when La Carrera hits town, you are the circus, you're the entertainment. And in many of these areas, this is an experience that's unique, and the town turns out. And people like Conrad would print up little cards, souvenirs to give away. the people really appreciate the event. It's not like here in this country where somebody in a loud car is a nuisance. I mean, it's been a long time since the era when car people were looked on fondly by their fellow motorists. But as we found, I mean, doing the Mille Miglia in Italy, you saw this where the public still had a fervent kind of appreciation for the cars and this whole kind of sport that it was, and man and machine and all the rest of that. When you'd see, it didn't matter if it was Italy or Mexico. The nuns closed the school and the kids out on the fence watching the cars come through. You feel like you've given them something and you want to give back. So I think it's a wonderful international thing to do, to share this kind of thing. And I hope that there's some people in this room that may be motivated to go and make it all happen. There are a lot of ways to do it.
Exactly. So what you're saying, I've raced in the United States, Canada, and Mexico, and in Mexico, the population is happy to see you. You know, the road may be shut down, they may be inconvenienced, but they're happy. It seems so. They're happy to you know, watch you, to suffer that inconvenience and see the cars go by. And in the evenings, you know, I feel more appreciated for what my little hobby is in Mexico than any place else that I've been. So
It's really remarkable. When you're driving through, you'll hear the screams from the schools. There's kids just lining the fences, and sometimes the roads will slow down. It's not on the speed sections, but just the number of young people when we're talking about, you know, vintage cars and how do we get young people interested in this. And I think a race like this that's running through the country, it does have such an impact on the children that may become racers. And I think, you know, I know Mocket's a hero in Mexico, and you make cards, but
A kid came up to me last year. You know you're getting old when this kid comes up and says, "Oh, Senior Market, you raced with my grandfather."
And I just have to say, it's great to be in motorsports and Monterey, the car racing at Laguna Seca. It's just how many wonderful people, you know, well into their 70s and 80s, are still doing what they love, that they haven't quit. I mean, we always need to have that sense, okay, I need to make some adjustments. But this motorsport thing has, you know, great legs on it, I think. And I hope that we can encourage more people to do La Carrera and take the risks. It's been a really gratifying thing for me to do. And grateful to you, Eduardo. I mean, I built a car just for La Carrera. I mean, it's for that event only. And it's, you know, that was a dream. I love the Ferrari Mexicos. I love, you know, the Mille Miglia 375s or the Porsche Carreras. These are fabulous cars that were built exactly for this event. And it's very unique. The demands of the road, the conditions you go through are just remarkable. And, you know, without you, Lalo, wouldn't have it.
Yes, as I said at the beginning, thank you. Thank you. And I mean, I hope to see you all somewhere around La Carrera. If you want to see a lot of old cars with a massive dose of Viagra, then go and take a look at us. All right. Thank you very much.
Oh, thank you. And I think if anyone would like to ask questions, I haven't seen a signal, but yes, let's go, gentlemen. And they might bring you a microphone. I think they're going to do that.
First, a naive question. Is the course exactly the same every year? It changes from year to year?
It does, and it's, you know, we used to run all the way, Paulo, if he says to, would go to the borders, but that's not happened. So for a while we were ending in Zacatecas, but the route does change, and I think it changed in the historic days too. Initially, it started in Texas and ran down to Tuxtla. And, you know, interesting thing, Angelica assisted with a book, and it said that they turned it around because they didn't even have telephones and communications down at the finish line. And there was a fair deal of excitement about what was happening. So they reverted the route for the final years. And so it continues to change. I think Lalo likes to, you know, involve other cities and keep, you know, all of Mexico involved. So it does vary.
So the other question is, you mentioned risk. Are spectators killed in this race?
No, so far I don't think we have. We had fatalities, unfortunately, for drivers and some co-drivers, but spectators, no. And we have a lot of people on the roads, on the closed roads, now because of social media, they know, and people are asking what time, and we will have. And obviously, when you are driving the stages, you can see people in silly places, unfortunately, but no, touch wood, nothing has happened.
What you see in like World Rally Cup, where the spectators are out there challenging the course, that doesn't happen in Mexico. And I can, just a nugget of wisdom that I've found over the years is whenever I'm on a speed section and I see a crowd of people up there at a corner, I slow down. Doesn't matter, they may be going, hey, go on. But what I know is that if there's a crowd of people there either has been a wreck or there's going to be a wreck. And I don't want to be that person. So.
The locals, the people standing there, they know where the treacherous part of that section is. And so that's your marker. They're waiting for something to happen, and you don't want to be it.
Well, the better part is they're waving you on to dive into that turn. See you, Luke. That's right.
Yeah.
I have the mic.
Thank you.
One question, how many classes are there?
There are 5 original classes in La Carrera, so only 5 classes can win upright the Carrera, yeah. It's until 1954 that it was the last Carrera in the 50s. So now they have the historic classes, and I think there are 5.
Well, we started the very beginning from cars from 39 all the way to 54, because back in the 50s, they were the only available cars. Just remember they were brand new when they started. And one of the things that was more important for the race was the influence of the U.S. in the race. The very first race, 1950, started from Texas going all the way south to Chiapas. But there was a pressure from all manufacturers for building cars for the race, because most of the American enthusiasts wanted sports cars. And you didn't have any sports cars in America back in 1950. The very first sports car you had was 53, the Corvette, which was not, with the respect of all GM, a sports car. It was a Bel Ray out of whatever, Bel Air, just chopped up, and just for the boulevard. But nothing to do against Maseratis, Borwards, Porsches, Ferraris, etc. So they changed the sense of the race, starting from back south, all the way to the American border. So they started selling a lot of cars everywhere. 3 years later, they were selling more cars from Ferrari in California than they sold in Italy. And same for Porsche and whoever. But we suddenly realized that there were no more old cars, building old cars. It was expensive and difficult to get them. So we started going all the way to a different era of Mexican road race cars, such as the pony cars, the Camaros, Mustang, Chevy Novas, whatever, up to 1970. And that's what we call the historic classes. And nowadays, I believe there's half and half. The grid, starting grid is half and half, which is okay. Everybody, I mean, the new generation didn't get to see those Mustangs racing against Barracudas or Camaros.
How many speed sections per day, and how long are the speed sections?
Well, it depends on the. We try to give the speed sections where there are no any towns involved, far away from the civilization. But as Conrad said in the beginning, people already know where we have in the speed stage. They want to see it. They don't want to see it at the main plaza in a town. They want to see us in action. And it becoming more difficult to get people away from that sections. Because we have from 6 to 8 sections, speed sections a day, time stages, which is a good balance between going transit and going fast.
Like 20 kilometers a speed section?
Yeah,
20,
you'll-
Between
30?
20 to, the last one is 34 kilometers in a place called Espinazo del Diablo, Devil's Spine. Just imagine how is it in Durango. If you plan on crashing, let's do it on the left side because there's the mountain.
Yeah,
On the
you know
right
you're in
side,
trouble when the starting grid, the protection guys have climbing ropes and there's a helicopter flying overhead, so you know.
Anyhow, well, we try to do it, and we started with roll cages before the FIA asked us to start it because we needed, we know what happened, and we had several very nasty accidents and nobody getting hurt. And we started with protection from neck, such as the hands device or lead brace or whatever, before SCCA or before Champ Car. We try to keep as safe as possible. You cannot, get away from danger from a race such as ours. But we try to keep it, with the best doctors, the best technical equipment, and the best cops. We have from 13 to 15 cop cars following the whole route, plus the chopper. And what they call the Operación Cordillera, which is from county to county, they start coming, more than 100 cop cars. You cannot see that kind of support anywhere in the world. Because you know what? Our cops love the race. Right, Angelica?
It's unbelievable. Not because I am sold on La Carrera and I am Mexican. I'm so proud of this race. And people always ask me, Angelica, what is it? And I say, you really want to know, come and race. Come and do La Carrera, because then you will understand. It's just amazing going on the highway and the Federal with the speed, the speed will go like, hey, and you're flat out, and it's just like, great. Or, you get to a town and they shut the whole street and you're going through red lights and the policemen are just waving at you like, oh, this is great, and honestly, this is just absolutely fantastic.
You're daydreaming when you go on the straightaway 160 miles an hour and the cop said, faster, please.
I towed my car to the border and then I'll drive it down through Mexico, and going around the bypass of Mexico City, I got pulled over by a highway patrol, a Federale, and I'm like, oh no, oh. And it ended up that he remembered me from last year and he gave me hugs and he's like, hey, don't you remember me? I was with the event. No, I can't do it this year. It was like, oh man, that was like the right kind of cop. So they're very good guys. There's very good spirit, and Mexico really turns out. Everybody, the police and are fabulous to work with. And we give out all these things to people, and I'd like to kind of finish, unless there's more questions, but just it's so hard when it's over, though, isn't it, Angelica?
Oh yeah, it's really sad because for us, for people that race La Carrera, it's like after you waited 1 year for the start and after you are absolutely knackered because of the adrenaline, because you give your best, and when it finishes, it's just like, oh, for us, it's like waiting for Christmas or Santa Claus. You're like, oh, I need to wait another 365 days for another Carrera. And that is honestly for a lot of, I don't know, do you agree with us? It's just like Christmas, like I need to wait and you count the days. It's just very, very hard when it finishes, when it's over, because I don't know, it's just like, how can I explain it? It's the nostalgia of waiting and you did your best and then you go back and think, well, how can I do better? And for me, everybody says, Angelica, you know the Carrera, like the palm of your hand. I say, no, every Carrera I learned something different. And I think that's the beauty of an event, that you don't get bored of it, that you can live with passion and you go like, wow, I learned something else. or I met somebody else, I could help, I helped somebody else. And I think that is very, very special.
Thank you. Question?
What would a typical budget be for a pro team going for a class win?
How much money?
Yeah.
Yeah,
I was
typical.
afraid someone would ask that.
I don't know.
Well, you know, I like to do things myself and, go on the cheap, let's say. But I would say that exclusive of the entry fee, so the drive down and going back, you're probably going to need, say, $12,000. And that's ignoring, then afterward you fix the car. The car's worn out, that's if you don't wreck. So, yeah, but I'd say 12,000 would, in my best recollection for budgeting, your team, you need to have, let's say 4 people. You get a crew cab truck with a trailer, and so you got 4 guys in there. The rooms, the bar tab, everything else that goes on. Probably about 12 grand. So that's my guess. So. I don't know what it is now.
Lalo, ¿cuánto cuesta la inscripción? How much is Lalo, how much is the entry fee? La
What's the
inscripción.
entry fee now?
Who?
La inscripción, ¿cuánto cuesta? How much is the entry
It's
fee?
$9,000 from start to finish with 8 nights of hotels. I
And
mean,
they're top-notch hotels in
5
every
pound
city.
starts, and with all parties, the Mexican insurance from our federation, and all kind of stickers, whatever, and obviously the right to compete in a very unique event. And let me tell you something,
So towing
the
a-
cops
No.
and the kids along the race, we're doing not on a vacation period, and the education department all in our country are going to sue us because all the kids go to the race instead of going to school. But this is also culture. I mean, they love the race. They come every time, and you really become famous. Ask Doug. He's very famous in our country. Tia Dog. All right? They love the race, and as perhaps most of our country do, they really love all cars racing fast, and they have they remember what happened back in the 50s, because somewhere in the family, an aunt or the grandfather or whoever saw the race coming back in 1954, 53, and they keep one photo of the cars that were on, and they look the same.
We're going to take this party outside. So thank you so much for having us.